Alrighty, awesome. So welcome everyone. We are super excited to have you all here to talk about the Backing Small Businesses Disaster Recovery Grant. This is a round that's going to be launching tomorrow morning. So we're really excited to talk to you about the application, the eligibility, and the review criteria, as well as some tips and tricks for applicants. This session is going to be about 45 minutes to 50 minutes of content. It's all going to be recorded, so don't worry about taking notes. We will have it posted up to our landing page shortly after, as soon as we can get the video rendered. Then you can refer back to it. And if you have any questions, you can always email us, and we will have our email available on the last screen of the session as well. So without further ado, I'm going to get started here. All right, so on today's call, this is a brief overview of what we're going to be covering. So we're going to start off with some welcomes and introductions. We have a representative from American Express here who I'll introduce in just a moment. We'll talk a little bit about who Main Street America is, and then about the program specifically, including the eligibility, the application questions, the review criteria. If you have any questions along the way, on your Zoom window, you should see a little Q&A form. You can use that to send questions into us, and then at the end of the call, with as much time as we have available, we will work on getting those answered. If you have a question that is very specific to you and your situation, or if we're not able to get to your question in the time that we have today, you can always send us an email. Our email address is smallbizgrant@mainstreet.org. So you can always send us an email there. And if you are emailing us in regards to an application after you've submitted, it helps us to just have that application number handy as well. But I'm going to start off by introducing our representative from American Express, Magdalena Pedroso.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining today. As Amanda mentioned, my name is Magdalena Pedroso, and I am a program officer here at American Express's corporate sustainability team. I lead our Build and Grow portfolio of philanthropic programs, which includes all of the work that we do to help small business owners like yourself facing economic challenges and other hardships, in hopes to help build your economic vitality and foster a vibrant community in your areas. This first ever round of Backing Small Businesses grants for disaster recovery is something that we're really excited about, and we've thought a lot about the uses of the grant and how you all can take advantage of it. And so I hope it is meaningful for you all, and best of luck in your applications. Over to you, Amanda.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, so let's do a short intro. I'm Amanda Siskind. I am an associate manager for the corporate grants program. My focus is specifically on the Backing Small Businesses program. So I will be the main point of contact. If you're emailing that small biz grant email, it will most likely be me replying. But we also have some fellow team members as well who also help out with the program. So I work for Main Street America. If you're not aware of who Main Street is, we are a subsidiary of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and we are committed to strengthening communities through preservation-based economic development in those older historic downtown and neighborhood commercial districts. So anywhere that you might call Main Street in your home, that's really our bread and butter, is helping make sure that your businesses, your programs, your organizations are all supporting each other and the community that you live in. We're a network-based organization. So I work at our national level, but then we have a network of more than 1,600 organizations, as well as 46 state, county, and city level coordinating programs who help organize all of those local programs and make sure that everything is running smoothly and people are getting the support and resources they need. We work according to the Main Street approach, which is a framework for community development that we use that equips local leaders with a practical, adaptable, and balanced approach to help with their work. Here you can see a map of all of our different programs across the country. We have different levels of programs, including some folks who just joined the network just to be part of our social media on the point, but also who participate in various programs and events throughout the country. I talked about that Main Street approach. So it's a 4-point approach where we focus on economic vitality, design, promotion, and organization in order to make sure that we have a holistic strategy for community transformation. And really that economic vitality part is where our small businesses play the biggest role. So we want to make sure that we're providing resources and opportunities for small business owners to be able to uplift the communities that they're in and help make sure that those main streets stay really strong and relatable to their local communities. So let's talk a little bit about the Backing Small Businesses Grant Program. It first launched in 2021 to help small business owners recover from the COVID pandemic. Since then, it has shifted and adapted. And in our newest form, we're really excited to bring this disaster recovery round, as Mags mentioned. So this year in total, we're anticipating just under 6 million in total awards to support economically vulnerable and locally significant small businesses. We have this initial round, this disaster recovery round, that's going to be a total of 100 recipients who are each going to receive $10,000 each. And then later in the summer, we're going to have a broader round, which is open for applications, which will have 400 recipients who will again receive $10,000 each. More info about that broader round to come this summer. So if you're watching this webinar and you realize, hey, I don't think I'm actually eligible for this disaster recovery round, keep an eye on our social media and on our email lists. If you're not already subscribed, I highly recommend doing so. And you'll be able to receive more info about that broader round later this summer. Once both of those two rounds, the disaster recovery and the broader round, are completed, we will have a total of 500 recipients, and those will be eligible to apply for an additional enhancement grant. So this will be a limited subset of 25 recipients out of that total pool of 500 who can apply to receive an additional $30,000. This will all happen after the first rounds have been completed for both the disaster recovery and the broader round. We don't want you to think too much about your enhancement grant projects. We're not going to be reviewing any of the applications in this round based on what you might intend to do with your enhancement grant. So just focus initially on what you would intend to do with the $10,000 grant. And we'll talk more about that enhancement grant later for those who are recipients of the initial rounds. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this program and specifically the eligibility requirements. All right. So the focus of this round is on disaster recovery. So because of this, we're going to be using a lot of FEMA information and FEMA definitions in order to define who is eligible. So there are really three key dates that you have to keep in mind when we talk about eligibility. The first is January 1st, 2024. So that's kind of our early bound on the dates here. The second is the application submission date, which is going to be whatever date you actually submit your application. And then somewhere in that window is going to be your FEMA-declared disaster that impacted your business. The disaster does have to be an officially declared disaster by FEMA. So that means it has to appear on the FEMA website. And on the FEMA website, all disasters include a range of incident dates. So when the disaster actually occurred. And one of those dates on that incident date must be between January 1st, 2024 and the day you submit your application. We'll talk a little bit more on the next slide about some of the additional eligibility requirements, but they will reference either that January 1st, 2024 date, the application submission date, or your disaster incident date, wherever it falls in that timeline. All right, so let's talk about that. So around the January 1st, 2024 date, in order to be eligible, on that January 1st date, your business must have been in operation. If you started your business after that date, unfortunately, you will not be eligible for this program. Your business might have shifted. You might have switched from maybe a sole proprietorship to an LLC sometime in that date. But as long as you have business records from your business on or before January 1st, 2024, that's what we are looking for. Then on the actual incident date, when the program occurred, we're looking to see that your business was located in a designated area. This is another FEMA term that is used on their website. The designated areas are the counties or parishes or boroughs, depending on what state you live in, but the counties that have been identified by FEMA as impacted by that disaster and who are eligible for FEMA aid. So if your business was located in one of those designated areas when the incident occurred, you would be eligible. Also, at the time that the incident occurred, you must have been operating out of a brick and mortar storefront located in an older or historic Main Street, downtown, or commercial district. Now, you'll see on the right some examples. We know that Main Streets look different everywhere across the US. Some places might not even have something that's officially called Main Street. You might have maybe a collection of storefronts by an intersection, or maybe your downtown commercial area is really dispersed and kind of mixed in with residential. So we do take that in the context of whatever your community looks like, knowing that sometimes it won't always look exactly like, you know, a line of storefronts on a single boulevard. But as long as you're kind of in the area where people in your community would go to and be like, yeah, I'm going downtown, or I'm going, you know, to go shopping, or I'm going to go eat at restaurants, anywhere that you would consider like a place where you could spend maybe a half a day on the weekend running errands and doing activities, we would consider that that downtown area for you. Notably, this means that if your business at the time of the incident was online or virtual only, you are not eligible. If your business was a home-based business, so you didn't have your own brick and mortar storefront that was just dedicated to the commercial area, you would not be eligible. Or if your business was a mobile business operating out of, say, a food truck or a similar type of van, you would not be eligible for this program. Additionally, when the incident happened, if you were located in a co-working space, if your business was based in a shopping mall where you didn't have any kind of street front access to your business, or if you were located in an office park, we would also consider that not eligible. We do know that there are some spaces where you know, an office park can have a wide range of definitions. So we do look at that again in the context of your community. If you're, say, a dentist's office and you happen to be in a building that has other similar doctor's offices, and that's really the only available space for that type of business in your community, we will take that into account. When we're talking about office parks, we are specifically looking for the types of parks where folks will go and just commute for work, and it's totally separated from the remaining part of the community. And it's not really a place that people would go to, or like I mentioned, running a half day of errands. If you have specific questions about your own particular circumstances around eligibility with any of these, feel free to email us at smallbizgrant@mainstreet.org, and we can get in touch with you and discuss that more directly. All right, so that's related to that January 1st date and then the incident date. We also have some eligibility requirements that are tied to the day that you submit your application. We know that especially in disaster recovery, there are some things that change over time. Maybe you used to have a brick and mortar business, but you've had to switch to being online only because you can't access your storefront, things like that. So that's why we tie those to the actual incident date. But when you submit your application, we have some additional requirements. You must be an owner of the business, over 18 years of age. If you have somebody who's part of your business who's filling it out for you as a proxy, you will need to make sure that they have your information and the contact info for the owner of the business, so that we can get in touch with the actual decision maker if we need to. You must employ less than 20 full-time employees, and the application will cover how we review this, but essentially we consider a full-time employee or a full-time equivalent employee when we're calculating this 20. So you can do a little bit of math. Again, it will go over this in the application itself. But if a full-time work week for you all is 20 hours a week, and that's your standard full-time, if you have 2 employees who each work 10 hours during the week, we would kind of combine that and we would consider them a 1-person full-time equivalent because they work a total of 20 hours collectively. Again, it will cover that in the actual application itself. And if you have any questions, you can always email us. We also ask that you be in good standing in the state in which you do business, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. We also ask that you have an active business license if you're required by your state or local government. And we know that different municipalities, different states have different requirements for this. So again, it's based on the context of your region. You also must not be a nonprofit or part of a franchise. We do have some other grant programs run by Main Street America, which are open to nonprofits. This one is specifically for-profit businesses. And we want to make sure that it's going to independent small businesses, not small businesses who are part of a franchise. And then finally, when you submit your application, you must not have previously received grant funds from a program sponsored by American Express and spent those grant funds towards recovery from this particular disaster. So if you've previously received funds from an American Express program, maybe it was a previous round of the Backing Small Businesses grant program, but you spent those funds on something not related to this disaster. It could be entirely separate from being disaster related. Maybe you just spent it on merchandise or marketing, or maybe there was a previous disaster that you had spent funds on. That is all okay, and you are still able to apply. But if you had spent any of those funds on this particular disaster that you will indicate in the application, and those funds came from American Express or a program sponsored by American Express, then you would not be eligible for this particular program. And that's just to help make sure that we're helping to spread some of those grant funds around to businesses who have not already received support. When you're thinking about your proposal, the options for what you can spend your grant funds are pretty wide open. We do have a lot of different categories. This is a non-exhaustive list. And again, these will be listed in your application as well, so you can review them there. So we have community events and programs. This could be something like a reopening event. If you need to do any kind of educational or training workshop, maybe you had to hire new staff and you need to do some sort of training there. It could be hosting community fundraisers. It could be partnerships with other small businesses who have also been impacted. You could spend grant funds on equipment and inventory, especially recovering lost inventory, or if you need to repurchase any point of sale device or software, purchasing any items for sale, display cases, kitchen equipment, that kind of thing. You can spend your grant funds on marketing, investing in social media campaigns to rebuild your customer base, or perhaps building a website if you've had to switch over to doing e-commerce. You can spend your grant funds on operational strategies, which would be things like back-end administrative assistance like business coaching, accounting software, and other sorts of support just to help the viability of your business overall. You can spend grant funds on physical repairs and improvements. This would be like signage, awnings, painting facades, things like that. So you can keep an eye on those. We do ask, however, if you are going to be doing any physical repairs or improvements, that you make sure that you have permission to do those repairs. If you own the building where your business is located, that's great. You don't have to own the building to be eligible though. But if you are leasing or renting, we do ask that you ensure that you have your landlord's permission in order to make any physical repairs. And there will be a space in the application to include that. You can also spend your grant expenses on remediation and cleanup, especially if the disaster was particularly recent. Debris removals, mold or smoke remediation. Again, we just want to make sure that you have landlord approval if necessary in order to do that. You can also spend your grant funds on resiliency projects, especially if you're in an area that is particularly prone to natural disasters and you're anticipating that this will be a repeat occurrence. This could be things like installing alarms and safety equipment, putting in a rain garden as a preventative measure for floodwater catchment, alternative power sources, that type of thing. You can also spend your grant funds on technology, such as data recovery, building an online storefront, an online ordering system, things like that. And you can spend your grant money on payroll, rent, and utilities expenses as well. We know that this can be a tough time for folks, and we want to make sure that you have what you need to be able to keep your business afloat. One thing to note is that any kind of debt or loan repayment is not an eligible grant expense. This could include paying off credit cards for purchases you've already made. That is not an eligible grant expense. And if that is included in your proposal and in your budget, we will mark your application as ineligible. This could also include if you've received other loans related to disaster recovery as well, such as an SBA loan that has to be repaid. You are not allowed to spend your grant funds to repay those loans. If you are seeking other grant assistance elsewhere and you're looking to do any kind of matching, you are allowed to use this grant as part of that matching process. That is okay, but we want to make sure that the grant funds themselves do not go towards debt or loan repayment. All right, let's talk a little bit about the application itself and what you can expect. So some key dates for you, and again, this will be posted on our landing page as soon as we are able, so you'll be able to review these dates, and most of them are already on the landing page itself already. So the application will open at 9 a.m. Central Time tomorrow morning, May 7th. The application will be open for 2 weeks, and it will automatically close just before midnight, so 11:59 p.m. Central Time on May 21st. Again, that's all in Central Time, so make sure if you're in a different time zone that you adjust for that accordingly. During the months of May and June is when we're going to be reviewing. We may have some follow-up questions, so keep an eye on your email and on your phones in case that happens. And then by late June is when we expect the recipients to be announced and the funds to be awarded. So please keep an eye on our social media and our landing pages for that. If you email us asking for the status update of your application, we're generally not able to provide individual updates to folks, and we can only direct you to when we expect that public announcement to be made. For those folks who do receive the grant, you will then, as soon as the funds are awarded, through September 30th, have your spending window. So the deadline to spend all of your funds is going to be September 30th at 11:59 p.m. Central Time. And then about 2 weeks following that is when we will have your final report, your grant report due, which is currently scheduled for October 15th at 11:59 p.m. And we will be in touch with anybody who's a recipient about what to expect from that final report. Typically that involves a kickoff meeting when you first receive the funds, so that we can let you know what to expect on that final report, so you can have all of that collected as you're going through your spending window. And when that final grant report is due is also when you would be able to apply for the enhancement grant as well. All right, so accessing your application. The application link is going to appear on our website, on our landing page, which was the same page that you may have gone to register for this webinar. That link will appear at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, so keep an eye out for that. When you click on that link, you will be redirected to a website called Submittable. Submittable is the platform where we handle all of the applications. It's not managed by Main Street America. It is an external platform. So you will need to create a Submittable account for that website. If you've previously applied for any grant programs with Main Street America, you can use the same Submittable account that you already have. If not, it's a pretty easy process to set one up very quickly. You'll see this picture on the right side here. You basically enter your email and create a password and add your first and last name. When you hit that sign up button, you should receive a verification link, which will come from notifications@email.submittable.com. This should come to you within a few minutes of clicking that sign up button, and it is important that you verify your account if you need to log it to your account later. So keep an eye out for that email to come in. Sometimes it does get misdirected into a spam folder. If you use a Gmail account, sometimes it might be redirected into that promotions tab that you see at the top of your inbox. So keep an eye out for that. As I mentioned, the Submittable website is not managed by Main Street America. So if there's any kind of technical issue, if your email isn't coming through, if you run into an issue setting up your account, you will need to contact Submittable's support directly for any of that technical help with the website itself. If you have trouble accessing any of their customer support, you can email us at smallbizgrant@mainstreet.org, and we can send you the link to their customer service page. Once you log in, the application page is translatable with Google Translate. So if you need that, that has generally been a pretty successful way to access the application. However, even if you translate the page, we do ask that the application itself and any answers that you submit be filled out in English. Right now, we don't have the capacity to accept applications in other forms. When you get there, when you first log in to the application, you will be met with the eligibility form. In order to proceed to the main application, you have to first go through the eligibility form. It's basically going to run you through the list of eligibility requirements that we saw on our previous page, and just confirm that yes, you are eligible for each of those categories. Once you successfully submit the eligibility form, you will be automatically redirected to the main application. Make sure you pay special attention to how you answer the questions on the eligibility form, because if you answer a question incorrectly and it marks it as you are ineligible, we don't have a way to go back and edit that for you. So make sure you double check your eligibility form questions before you hit that submit button and proceed to the main application form. When you're filling out the main application form, you do have the ability to save your draft, so you can come back to it in multiple sessions. You can come back and re-review your answers. But when you click that final submit button at the very bottom of the page, make sure that you have filled everything out correctly, because we don't have a way to submit edits after submitting your application. So please make sure you're double checking your work before you move on, either from the eligibility form to the main application or to submit the actual application itself. When you're filling out the application, there's a couple of documents that we want you to have at the ready. You'll need to have some sort of document showing the impact of the disaster on your business. This could be photos or video clips. It could be screenshots from news articles. Maybe it's a copy of some receipts of some of the things you've had to purchase so far in your recovery process. Maybe you have a short summary of an insurance claim, something like that. If you are using the grant funds or intending to use the grant funds towards any physical repair projects, make sure you have some before photos saved of the area that you intend to do those repairs in. When you do your final report at the end, we will ask for after photos, and it's helpful to have those before photos up front as part of the application already. We also ask that you have with you a copy of your recent business tax return. This is for reference only. There will be questions, and we'll talk about this in a minute, that ask you to pull some information from your business tax return. You don't have to upload a copy of it to us, but we want you to have it ready and available so you have that information at your fingertips. If you are a sole proprietor, we will also ask you to upload a copy of a business license. This could be a state level license, it could be a county or a municipal level license, just some sort of license if it applies to your business, demonstrating that yes, you do have permission to run and operate your business. We ask this because sometimes for sole proprietors, state websites may not have all of this information tracked for you in the same way that they do for LLCs or corporations. So it helps us to have that information uploaded directly with your application. You will also want to make sure that you are in good standing in the state in which you operate. Most states have a way to go online and verify and pull a copy of your certificate of good standing. You do not necessarily need to upload this to the application, but we want you to be aware of how to pull it and how to find it so that you can double check that status before you apply. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. And then finally, you need to confirm that your business was at the time of the incident in the designated area for that FEMA-declared disaster. And you'll want to have on hand a copy of the disaster code. And we'll talk about that in a moment as well. All right, so how do I check if I'm in good standing? The website for this is different for every single state, so we don't have URLs here. Usually the best way to find them is to Google business entity lookup or business entity search in your state. Usually it's related to your Secretary of State website as well, so you may be able to find it on there. One potential option, there's a website called secstates.com where you can go and select your state in that list, and then it should have a link to that page on your state's government website. One thing to note is that if you are a sole proprietor or a single member LLC, like I mentioned, these may not show up in the Secretary of State records. So if that's the case for you, that is okay. That's why we ask for a copy of that business license. When you go and look up your business, usually you do so by entering your business name into a search field. And when you do so, you will usually see some sort of status associated with your business. Most of the time, it'll say something like active or in good standing. If you see something along the lines of inactive or delinquent or non-compliant, don't worry too much. It does not necessarily mean that you are not going to be eligible. Most of the time, the reason for these statuses is that there was some sort of annual report or a small fee that you had to send in to the state that is just missing from the recent year. Most of the time, this can be filed or paid online. In some cases, you might have to call the Secretary of State and contact them to figure out how you can get that status adjusted. But typically, it is not a pretty intensive process, and you might be able to get that adjusted within the application window. So as long as by the time we're reviewing your application, you are in that active and in good standing status, that is all fine for us. So just make sure you're in touch with your Secretary of State or the associated department if you need to fix those statuses. Some websites may ask you to purchase a copy of the certificate before they'll show you the status. We do not ask you to purchase a copy of the certificate. You do not have to download it. You do not have to upload it into the application. If you're in a state that requires you to pay money, please do not do so. We will pay if necessary on our end when we do our final checks. As much research as you can do ahead of time to just confirm that you're in good standing. We just ask that you do that in good faith. And then in regards to looking up your FEMA information, so this will be also laid out in the application itself. It will have the exact URLs that you will click to go to the FEMA website, and you can search for where your location was at the time of the disaster. You will be searching primarily by state. So you'll scroll down to a list of declared disasters and identify any disaster where that incident date, which you can see in this top screenshot, is that incident period. As long as that incident period includes any dates on or after January 1st, 2024, that would be an eligible disaster. When you click on the link for that disaster, so if I clicked on where it says Illinois severe storms, you will then be brought to another page about that disaster specifically. On the left-hand side, there will be this pale blue menu bar where you will see a tab for designated areas. If you click on that, it will show you all of the designated areas associated with that particular disaster. Again, this is county or parish or borough based. So you'll be looking for the county where your business was located in. And when you scroll down on that page, you will see that there are two areas. There's an area for individual assistance and an area for public assistance. As long as the county that your business was in at the time of the disaster is in either one of those categories, that's what we're looking for you to be eligible. So just search through. In this case, I'm based in Chicago, so I would see that Cook County is located in the individual assistance list within those designated areas. So that would make me eligible if this disaster had impacted my business. When you're filling out this information, most of this will be done during the eligibility form, which is where you'll have that step-by-step guide to go and search and confirm this. It will ask you in the eligibility form to note down the FEMA disaster code, which you will enter later in the main application form. That disaster code is what you see listed there in parentheses. It's usually 2 letters, a hyphen, 4 numbers, a hyphen, and then 2 letters. Most of the time, the last 2 letters of that will be the initials for your state. So you'll see in this case, for this severe storm incident, it's listed as DR-4819-IL for Illinois. If you are a business that's located in a tribal area, tribal areas are able to separately declare their own disasters, and those may not have that final state abbreviation on it. So your code might be a little bit shorter. But keep track of that code. You'll see it in all different places on the FEMA website associated with this disaster. You'll see it again in that kind of pale blue menu that will appear on the left side. Just keep track of that because you'll need to enter that later in your main application. All right, so let's talk about the application questions. Like I said earlier, you'll start off by filling out the eligibility form. Make sure you double check your answers to that before you click that submit button, because it must be completed correctly in order to proceed to the application. Once you get to the main application page, the first section is going to be related to basic owner contact info and business information. So this will be things like, your email address, your phone number. It might ask for website or social media links for your business. It will also ask for the official entity name for your business. So this is where you're going to want to have those tax returns on hand to make sure that you are telling us the entity name for your business exactly as it appears on your tax returns. If you're a sole proprietor, this would be the area where you may have to upload a copy of an applicable business license. You'll see in this screenshot on the bottom left is an example asking for that legal entity name. And it will actually tell you which form we expected you to have filled out for your business based on whether your business is an LLC or a partnership or a corporation or an LLC that's taxed as a corporation. So when you're looking through your tax returns, it will tell you what form we expect to have in there, and you'll want to enter that legal entity name exactly as it appears in your tax return. This includes things like punctuation and abbreviation. So LLC is different from L.L.C. So just make sure you're copying it exactly as it appears from your tax return. Once you've uploaded all of that kind of basic information about the business, then we'll have a section that will talk about the overview of your business. When was your business started? What type of business are you? What services do you provide? There will be some short answer questions in there, which will ask you to tell us about your business and how you got started and what made you want to run a small business. And then a second question asking about what your business's involvement has been in the community so far. If you're part of like a chamber of commerce locally or some sort of business mentorship program, that's a really great place to include that information, as well as what kinds of programs and things your business does in the community. Once we get past that basic business overview, is when we start to talk more specifically about the disaster and its impacts. So this is where I mentioned you'll want to keep that FEMA disaster code because it will be entered in this portion of the main application. There will also be questions about the types of losses that you incurred, if it was physical, if it was just economic damage, if you lost customers, things like that, as well as an estimation of the total costs of the losses that were incurred. We know that it can be very hard to estimate that, especially some of those things like if you lost customers or lost the ability to open for a few days, it can be a little bit tough to estimate what those losses are. So we're just asking for your best estimate overall. There will also be some short answer questions, which will ask you to describe the losses and damages that you've incurred in more specific detail. So if there were particular pieces of equipment that you lost, or maybe you had a roof leak that leaked right into where most of your merchandise was. And then there will also be a short answer question about what your recovery process has been like so far. Because these disasters could have happened anytime between January 1st, 2024 till now, there will be folks who are in different stages of their recovery. So we want to know what that has looked like. If you're still in the immediate aftermath where you're still doing triage and damage control, let us know. If you're a little bit more distanced from the actual incident itself, where there's no physical danger or immediate repairs that are happening, but you're still kind of in that slow rebuild, regaining process, we do look at applications in both of those areas. So we would just want to see what that recovery process has been like so far for you. Also in this disaster impacts area is where you can upload any of that supporting documentation that I mentioned earlier. So things like photos, videos of any physical damage, financial reports showing any loss of inventory, receipts from purchases you've had to make, summaries of insurance claims, things like that, or screenshots of social media and local news articles about the damage. And then finally, you will have the portion of the application which will talk about the actual project that you're intending to use these grant funds for. There will be a short answer question, which will ask for a description of your project and just a description of what you intend to use the funds towards. You will also be able to enter a short budget. We don't intend for these budgets to be super highly detailed. They can be a list of bullet points, like the example on the right side of the screen here. We want them to be detailed enough that we get a sense of how you're going to be spending the money and that we know that you are ready to hit the ground running when the grant funds come to you. Because you only have about a 2.5 to 3 month spending window, we want to make sure that you know, hey, this is what I'm intending to spend it on. These are the suppliers that I'm going to purchase these things from. So you'll notice in the example, it talks specifically about using Square terminals, so we know, hey, that's where I'm going to be purchasing this material from. We want to know if you need any contractors. Like in this example, we know that Jones Flooring and Construction is somebody who you've already lined up and perhaps even gotten a quote from for those flooring repairs or any other kind of physical repairs that you'll be doing. So we want to know that you've got all of that lined up and ready to go, and that basically as soon as the grant funds hit your bank account, that you're able to go and start working on your project. We don't need it itemized down to like every single individual pencil or piece of paper that you're going to purchase with the grant funds. You can have some kind of general categories, like you'll notice at the bottom it says inventory for produce or drinks. So we just want a kind of overview of what you intend to spend it for, but we don't need to know that you're going to buy 6 cases of lemons and you're going to buy 7 cases of tomatoes. That kind of granular detail you don't have to worry about going into. We just want to see kind of a broader view of knowing that you have a plan of how to spend the grant funds and you're ready to start rolling. There is a space for any optional files to upload. So if you do happen to have an Excel document where you've got your budget already worked up, maybe you had used it for a previous application somewhere else, you are able to upload it there as well. If you have any contractors that you're working with, you can also upload a copy of any quotes that they've provided, as well as if you have certain suppliers, maybe you have screenshots from their website of the type of equipment or purchases you're going to be making from them. You can upload that as well if you would like to. But again, it's not mandatory. The main thing we'll be looking for is that budget in that bullet point list. Once you finish the application, there is an optional questions section. Anything in this section is not going to be seen by our reviewers. It is just to be used as kind of metadata for us to make sure that we're improving the program overall from year to year. There will be some basic demographic questions. It will also ask if you had used anybody to assist you in filling out the application. For example, if you had a translator who helped fill out the application for you. We want to make sure that we have their contact info. So if we need to ask any questions or follow up with your application, we can loop them in as well so that they can help translate for that later. We'll also ask if you're connected to a local Main Street program. That is not a requirement for this grant program. You do not have to be in a designated Main Street area. You do not have to be connected to a local Main Street program if one even exists in your community. This is open for any small business as long as you're in that kind of downtown commercial corridor for your area that we talked about earlier. It doesn't have to be an official Main Street program, just as long as you're in that commercial zone. And then finally, there will be some questions about publicity and additional research opt-ins that you can either opt in or not, depending on your preference. And again, these will not be seen by our reviewers, so they will not impact the scoring of your application. All right, so let's talk a little bit about that scoring and how we determine who the recipients of this program are. The first one is going to be eligibility. So we do have that eligibility form, which does ask for all of the different eligibility questions that we talked about earlier. But we do also still double check and review and make sure that there's nothing in the application that perhaps slipped by. So if you think that you're not eligible, but you think that, oh, I can just answer the questions in a way that seems eligible, we are double checking that. And we do want to make sure that we catch anything that slips through. So please, if you are sure that you are not eligible, it is not worth your time to apply. You will not get through to receive the grant. We do review all of these applications by hand. So please keep in mind and answer those eligibility questions honestly. Again, if you have any questions and you're not sure what the answer should be for you, you can always email us and we can talk through your situation in more specific detail if needed. We also look at the overall feasibility of your project. It is a $10,000 grant. You do have until September 30th to spend that. That's about a 2.5 to 3 month spending window, depending on when the funds hit your account. So that seems like it might be a lot of time. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will be able to spend it all in that period, especially if you have any kind of physical repairs or construction work that needs to happen. So make sure that when you submit your application that you have as much lined up ahead of time that it is possible to spend that $10,000 by that spending deadline. That means we want to see that you have your suppliers and contractors identified in your budget, like we talked about earlier. It might also mean that if you need to think about things like obtaining permits or landlord permission, that you already have those obtained or ready to go if they're necessary for your project. We also know that in disaster recovery situations, there's going to be supply chain issues, regional disruption, transportation disruption, things like that. So we want to make sure that you've kind of planned around that. If there are any potential problems that you might encounter, you can use that short answer question describing your project to talk a little bit about how you plan to anticipate those and maybe even have a backup. Um, we do understand that sometimes once the funds have been awarded, there may need to be shifts and changes as your situation adjusts, and we can work with our recipients on a case-by-case basis. We'll also focus on the need of a business who has applied for this. So we're looking at the severity of damages and the losses to the business. We want to know, are they struggling to cover basic operating expenses? Maybe the way that you operate your business has been drastically altered. Maybe you've lost access to your storefront, or maybe a certain revenue stream that you had, maybe that supplier isn't able to get any merchandise to your area and you're having to shift to a different type of revenue stream. We will look at all of that holistically. We also want to look at compounding systemic changes. So if you were already struggling with staffing issues or supply chain issues before the disaster hit and the disaster has just exacerbated those issues substantially, we will also look at that as well. And you'll have space to talk about that in the general description about your business. We also look at the impact of the grant. So in addition to addressing the immediate need that your business has, kind of taking a step back from there and looking at what is the impact that this grant will have on your business in the long term, as well as the community around you. So especially if you're a business that provides a critical resource, so we would count that as things like food, water, shelter, access to email or phone services, things like that, that are really critical to a community in that immediate aftermath. Or if you're providing some sort of services that are not otherwise available to the community. So if all of the other businesses providing that service have not been able to reopen in the wake of the disaster, that's something that we will look at. We also want to know if the funding will be used to help stabilize and fortify your business. So if you're telling us that the impact of your disaster was that you've lost access to a customer base and that you're, perhaps not able to use funds towards previous revenue streams that have been fruitful for you, we want to see that that funding is then used to address those problems that you're looking to, update, maybe do a marketing campaign to regrow some of your customer base, or maybe you are looking to shift where your revenue streams are. So we want to see that that funding is tied to the issues that you've sustained from the disaster to help stabilize and fortify your business. We also want to make sure that we're limiting any potential further loss or damages. So if you've had damage to a roof, for example, that's something that is really critical to address, because if you don't address it right now, it could lead to further damages for your business later as you deal with water damage or potentially electrical damage or loss of merchandise. So we want to make sure that we're seeing that impact of hitting the most critical needs for your business. And then again, taking another step outside of that impact, we are also looking at community significance. This could happen in a bunch of different ways. One example is historical significance. If your business has been a longstanding or legacy business in the community, maybe the storefront that you're in is a particularly historic building. But it also could be that maybe your business is unique in the types of services or products that you offer. Maybe this is a type of product that is not available in the surrounding region, or there's something special about the community that you work with that makes it so that your business is really critical to them in particular. And overall, we just want to see that your business has been engaged and active in the community. We know that this can look different for different communities and also for different business owners. We're not expecting you to be involved in every single town council meeting and every single possible working group about small businesses in your community, but we want to see that you're engaged with them in the context of your business. So that might mean that you put on community events. It might mean that you have specific programs that cater towards portions of the community in particular. It might be that, maybe you just work with other small business owners and have partnerships with them and offer deals or reciprocal relationships, things like that. But we want to see that you have been involved in the community as a whole, both pre and post disaster. We know that especially post disaster, that can be hard because you're focused on a lot of the more kind of critical care things. So if you haven't been able to do some of that work that you've done previously post disaster, we totally understand that. So just any description of that that you can provide is helpful to us. All right, let's talk about the qualities of a strong application. So make sure that you're attaching documents that highlight the impact of the disaster, especially if you're doing any kind of physical improvement, that you have those before photos and you have that landlord permission if necessary. Overall, in your application, we want to see that you're showing pride in your business and in your neighborhood and in your community. So what are you doing as a business that is unique or special, and what really makes you stand out as involved in and critical in your surrounding community? We're also looking for a sense of determination and resourcefulness and adaptability. We know in these post-disaster moments, being able to kind of shift and adjust on the fly and adapt is a really critical skill for a small business owner to have. So we want to see how you've been able to do that so far in your recovery process. Um, but we also want you to be honest about the concerns and the difficulties that you're facing. We want to make sure that these grants are going to businesses who need that support. So tell us, how can these grants help you? What is the most critical need for you right now? And also making sure that if there are potential roadblocks, that you've accounted for them in your plan. A strong application will also make sure that the project is feasible to complete by that September 30th deadline, that your budget is broken down at least into rough categories, if not full itemization. Again, we don't necessarily need to know every single piece of paper that you're going to be purchasing, but a rough breakdown of this much is going to a marketing campaign via email, and this much is going to merchandise, and this much is going to purchasing some accounting software, things like that. And then also that your project plan anticipates any suppliers or contractors that you're going to engage if necessary. And then finally, we just want you to keep your application clear and concise. You'll see a lot of these small answer questions are going to be limited to about 250 words. So we're not asking you to spend hours and hours on this application. We know you all are very busy, especially in these post-disaster times. So it should just be pretty clear and concise what you need. We're not going to be reviewing based on your grammar or your spelling. As long as we can understand what you're saying, that's really what we're looking for. So you don't have to worry about it sounding super professional. If you need to work in bullet points instead of full sentences, that is absolutely fine. All right. So you'll see down here at the bottom is our small biz grant email address. So if you do have any questions, you can always email us there, and we can talk about those specifically. But we do have a couple minutes here for some question and answer. So I'm going to pull through some of that list. Our teammates here have been helping answer some of those. So if you have any questions?
Amanda, I'm going to chime in and just say, could you answer the final question that's actually in the chat that's asking specifically about the difference between this round and the broader round that will launch in a couple months?
Absolutely. Yeah, so this round is specifically intended for businesses who have been impacted by a natural disaster. That's an area that we've really wanted to focus on. We know that there have been some especially severe disasters in the past couple of years. So this particular round is just for those businesses who have been impacted by those disasters. The broader round that we will have later this year is going to be more open to businesses in general, whether they've been impacted by a disaster or not. So there will be some slight changes to the eligibility there. Obviously, there's not going to be anything tied to a particular incident date, but a lot of the same kind of vibe of we are looking for businesses who are in those kinds of downtown corridors, whatever that looks like for your business, is still something we will be considering. One other main piece to be aware of is that the broader round, we've expanded the eligible grant uses for this disaster recovery round to include things like payroll, because we know that that is something that can be a struggle when folks are doing the immediate work post-disaster. But typically for our broader rounds, payroll has not been an eligible grant expense. So keep an eye out. I see a question, are organizations able to apply to both? Yes, as long as you are not a recipient of the disaster recovery round. So as long as you're not part of the final 100, you are eligible to reapply for that future round. You will have to resubmit your application. The questions will be slightly different. But yes, you are eligible to apply to both if you don't receive the disaster recovery grant. So, cool. Any other general questions here? I see Bethany.
The other, I'd say general, a couple of folks have been asking about if they own multiple businesses. And also we've been sharing about how you can't be reimbursed for work that's already been done.
Correct.
But maybe you
yes.
could re-underline what is eligible, because I think that's important for folks to know, because this is different than the broader grant.
Yes. So we do ask that you only submit one application. If you own multiple businesses, we do know that it is possible that multiple businesses that you own have been impacted by a disaster, but just to ensure that we're spreading that grant funds as far as we can to as many different business owners as we can, we do ask that you only apply for one business at this time. We also want to make sure that at the time that the incident occurred, that your business had been in a brick and mortar storefront location in that downtown Main Street commercial corridor, whatever that happens to look like for your area. And that when you submit the application, that your business is in good standing, you're not a nonprofit or a franchise location, you have to be an independent small business that operates independently as a for-profit business. There was a question here about, will the slides be shared? Yes, we will be emailing out a PDF copy of the slides to everybody who attended today. And then we will also have the recording from today's session uploaded onto our landing page as soon as we can get the video rendered. So hopefully either today or tomorrow. There was a question about, is there a phone number to contact other than the email? There is, and that phone number is available on our landing page as well. You can either call or text. Texting tends to be a little bit faster to respond to. I'm not always available to answer questions live, but if you leave me a voicemail, I will get back to you as soon as I am able to. Right. Any other general questions that we've had? Brenda, that phone number can be found on the website page, and I can pull it up here for you. You would think that I would know my own phone number by now, but I'm not usually the one calling it.
I just sent it. Brenda, click
There.
answered questions and you'll see the response.
Yeah, so there's a question from Jacqueline asking about the type of disaster. So the disaster has to be a disaster that was declared by FEMA. So when you go to the FEMA website, they have a list of different disasters. Those disasters can be in multiple different categories. They can be fires, they can be strong storms, they can be winter storms, they can be all different hurricanes, things like that. So it's all based around whether the disaster is declared by FEMA. And that's a decision that's made by your state government in association with FEMA and the federal government. So how the impact then happened to you after that business is when we look more into that need category I talked about when we're reviewing your application. So how severe the damage was. We know for some folks, it might be physical damage. It might be that there was actual like damage to your storefront and to the property itself. It might also just be more economic damage. Maybe you had to close for a day or two while the power was out. Maybe there were issues where maybe your storefront itself wasn't damaged, but the local roads were, and so nobody could get to your business, or you couldn't get there to open it, that kind of thing. So that will all be accounted for in the application. You'll have space to include that in your short answers. Any other last questions we have in here?
Amanda, are you also going to post the slides or just post the actual recording? We're getting questions about both.
Yes, we should, anybody who attended or registered should get a PDF copy of the slides. And I will double check with Christy, but we should be able to upload a copy of that to the website as well as the recording. So that will be up within about the next day or two.
And finally, to close out, someone asking specifically about will they get the application announcement because they attended the webinar?
Yes, so I will be sending out an email to everybody who attended the webinar, letting them know when the application is live. It should automatically go live at 9 a.m. Central Time tomorrow morning. So that's Wednesday, the 7th. Again, that's 9 a.m. Central Time, so adjust that for whatever time zone you need to accordingly. All right. If you have any further questions, you can send them via email to that smallbizgrant@mainstreet.org email address, and I will get to them as quickly as I can. Thank you all so much for attending. We're really looking forward to your applications and being able to support you as best as possible. Also, while you're checking out our application, if you haven't yet, please check out the rest of our website. We do have some other resources available for small business owners that may be useful for you too. Thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing your application.